That evening, the cafe was too quiet. No clinking cups, no soft laughter, no low hum of conversation. Just the ticking of the clock above the counter and the steady drip of coffee into an empty pot. Amelia wiped the same spotless table for the third time, her eyes fixed on the front door. Any minute now, he would walk in. The man who had almost destroyed everything she'd spent 20 years building, with one lying review. Hello, dear friends. I'm Emily Carter, and this is a new story about revenge and justice. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional life stories. Amelia Foster had never planned to own a cafe. It had started as a dream she and her late husband, Mark, had whispered about over cheap coffee in their tiny first apartment. One day, a place of our own. Life, bills, and children delayed that dream for years, but it never disappeared. When Mark passed away unexpectedly, the world tilted. For a while, Amelia moved through days like a ghost. Then one morning, standing in her small kitchen with the kettle whistling and the smell of fresh bread in the oven, she realized there was only one thing that made sense anymore, building the dream they had once shared. So Mark and Millie's Corner was born. A small cafe on a quiet street with mismatched wooden chairs, lace curtains, and a chalkboard menu written in Amelia's careful handwriting. The air always smelled of freshly ground coffee, cinnamon rolls, and vanilla. A tiny bell over the door jingled as regulars walked in, office workers on their way to the bus, retirees who came for tea and conversation, students who sat in the corner with laptops and carrot cake. Amelia was in her late 50s now, with soft lines at the corners of her eyes and flour often dusting her apron. She knew her customers by name. She remembered who liked extra foam, who couldn't have sugar, who'd just lost a loved one and needed an extra cookie on the house. Her mornings began before sunrise. She would put the kettle on at home, sip strong tea while the house was still quiet, and listen to the birds waking outside. Then she'd walk the short distance to the cafe, the keys cold in her hand, unlock the door, and breathe in the welcome scent of yesterday's coffee and wood. She turned on the soft jazz playlist Mark had loved, started the ovens, and mixed dough as the sky paled. Life wasn't perfect, but it was gentle, steady, meaningful. Then came Victor Lane. He was a well-known local food critic in his early 40s, with a reputation for honest, brutal reviews that could make or break small businesses. His face appeared in the Sunday paper, his blog had thousands of readers, and restaurant owners either feared or courted him. Amelia knew his name but never expected to see him in her little corner cafe. One rainy Tuesday, he walked in. He wore a dark coat, a scarf, and an expression that suggested he was already bored. He glanced around, eyes taking in the decor, the customers, the menu. Amelia, not recognizing him at first, greeted him with her usual warmth. "Good morning." He didn't smile. "How special? Coffee." "That would be our cinnamon rolls," she said, her pride gentle, not boastful. He sat, took out his phone, and began typing as he waited. Something in his manner made Amelia's shoulders tighten, but she brushed it off. "A customer is a customer," she told herself. She served him the coffee and the warm, glazed cinnamon roll. He tasted both with a critic's careful slowness, face unreadable. Then he left without a word. Amelia watched the door close behind him, a faint unease settling in her chest like cold coffee grounds at the bottom of a cup. She had no idea her world was about to turn upside down. The storm arrived 2 days later, not with thunder, but with a notification sound on her phone. Amelia was refilling sugar jars when her young barista, Lily, rushed in from the back room, eyes wide. On her phone screen was Victor Lane's latest blog review. Amelia's hands went cold. She clicked. The review was vicious. Victor described a musty smell in the cafe, questionable hygiene, lukewarm coffee, and undercooked pastries. But the worst was in the second half. He claimed that after eating at her cafe, he had suffered severe stomach problems and suspected mild food poisoning. He went further. "I spoke with 2 other patrons," he wrote, "who mentioned feeling unwell after their visit." For a moment, the letters blurred. Amelia felt as if the ground had opened under her. This isn't true," she whispered. Lily nodded fiercely. "Of course it's not." But the damage had begun. Within hours, comments stacked under the article. Some people claimed they had always suspected something off about small places like hers. By the end of the day, 3 regulars had quietly canceled their catering reservations. The next morning, only a trickle of customers came through the door. A few looked around nervously, as if expecting to see mold on the walls or rats in the corners. 2 days later, a health inspector knocked on her door. "Routine follow-up," he said. Amelia's heart pounded as they went through the kitchen. He checked the fridge, the storage, the ovens, the sinks. He tested temperatures, looked at labels, took notes. Finally, he closed his clipboard. "Everything's in order, Mrs. Foster." Relief washed over her, but it was thin. "Yes," he said. The next week was worse. A woman walked in, looked around, whispered something to her friend, and both left without ordering. And when Amelia answered quietly that the claims were false and they'd passed inspection, he shrugged and left anyway. Bills didn't stop. Rent was due. Suppliers needed payment. Wages had to be paid. Amelia used her savings to keep her staff on. She cut her own salary to 0. At night, she sat at her kitchen table, the same one where she and Mark had once dreamed, and stared at piles of invoices. "It's just one review," her daughter said on the phone. But it didn't. Victor's name carried weight. Other bloggers referenced his piece. Local forums listed her cafe under threads about places to avoid. Once, on a particularly slow afternoon, Amelia saw a group of teenagers outside the window taking selfies with her sign in the background, tagging it with sick emojis. The worst moment came when an older couple, regulars for years, came in and ordered tea as usual. But they didn't stay. They took it to go. Amelia asked, forcing a smile. The woman hesitated. After they left, Amelia walked to the restroom, locked the door, and finally let herself sob, quietly, into a paper towel. For the first time since Mark's death, she wondered if she should give up. Maybe Victor was right about one thing, she thought bitterly. Maybe the world didn't have room for places like hers anymore. But then she remembered the health inspector's words. She remembered the care she put into every dish, the way she labeled and checked and cleaned. She remembered the girl who'd once worked 3 jobs so she and Mark could save enough for a deposit on this place. And somewhere beneath the grief and humiliation, another feeling began to grow. Anger. And then, slowly, purpose. Amelia didn't act right away. Instead, she watched. She listened. She learned. Late one night, unable to sleep, she opened Victor Lane's blog again. Not just the article about her, but others. She read through dozens of reviews, some glowing, some cruel. A pattern began to emerge. He was harsher on small, family-owned places, kinder to big, trendy spots that clearly had money. In some posts, he mentioned comped meals and special treatment. In one, she noticed a photo of him at a private tasting event, grinning arm in arm with a restaurant manager whose place he'd praised lavishly the very next day. "That's interesting," she murmured. The next morning, when the cafe was quiet, she sat with Lily and another long-time employee, Marcus. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, "if what he wrote about us was a lie, what if he lies elsewhere too?" Marcus frowned. "I don't know," Amelia said, "but I know this. We passed inspection. No one got sick. He took one visit and turned it into a story that nearly destroyed us." Lily leaned forward. "So what do we do?" Amelia shook her head. That would take money we don't have. And even if we won, it would take years. No. Over the next weeks, Amelia became a quiet detective. She created a private email account and joined local restaurant owner groups, reading threads where people spoke more candidly than they would in public. She started hearing stories. A small bistro owner who hinted that Victor had hinted back that a free monthly meal might keep future reviews friendly. A baker who had refused to give him an envelope of cash and received a scathing review 2 days later. A food truck operator who claimed Victor had written a negative piece without ever eating there, just because he'd been kept waiting behind other customers. Amelia reached out to some of them privately. She met a few in person, always in quiet corners of other cafes and diners. They were cautious at first, but when she showed them his review of her place and the spotless health report, something shifted. Anger, long buried, found a place to go. One owner, a woman in her 40s named Jenna, said, "I still have the emails." He wanted a collaboration fee to do a follow-up review to repair the damage, Amelia asked gently. Jenna smiled grimly. Piece by piece, Amelia collected a file, screenshots of messages, copies of receipts from free meals Victor had demanded, testimonies from owners willing to speak if they weren't alone. But she needed more than whispers and anger. She needed something undeniable. That's when Lily had an idea. She suggested, "Make him think we're desperate. See what he does." The thought made Amelia's stomach twist. The idea of that man in her cafe again, after everything he'd done, felt like inviting a wolf back into the henhouse. But she also knew wolves rarely changed their nature. "If we do this," she said slowly, "we do it legally. Clear. No tricks." They set the stage. Amelia wrote Victor an email from her official cafe account, careful to keep her tone polite, almost deferential. She acknowledged his review, stated that they had passed a thorough health inspection, and asked if he would consider revisiting to see the improvements they'd made. She mentioned, casually, that other owners had spoken about his influence. 2 days later, he replied, "Happy to consider a follow-up piece," he wrote. "My time is valuable, of course." "Terms," Amelia repeated aloud, a bitter taste in her mouth. On the day he was due to visit, Amelia set 2 things: a small digital recorder in her apron pocket, and a security camera on the counter pointed toward the table in the corner where she planned to sit with him. There were signs in the cafe already noting that security cameras were in use. Nothing hidden, nothing illegal. Her hands trembled as she arranged a fresh pot of coffee and a plate of her best pastries. The bell over the door rang. Victor walked in, same expensive coat, same air of importance. The cafe was half empty, business was still recovering, and his presence seemed to make the air colder. "Mrs. Foster," he said, as if they were old friends. "Thank you for coming," Amelia replied, voice steady. "Please, sit." They sat. She poured. He sipped, nodded. "So," he said, folding his hands. "Yes," she said. "You wrote that we posed a health risk. The inspector found nothing." He shrugged. "I write what I experience. It's subjective." Amelia's jaw tightened. He smiled thinly. She let the silence hang. Then he leaned forward. "Look, I understand your concern. A negative review can be unfortunate. But my readers trust me," Amelia asked, careful. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Let's call it a consulting fee. Cash is easiest, and of course, complimentary meals when I visit." "In exchange," Amelia said slowly, each word a stone, "you would tell people that we no longer make them sick." He smiled, missing or ignoring the steel in her tone. "I would help adjust the narrative." Amelia looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, a small, sad curve of the lips. "I think you've told me exactly what I needed to hear," she said. He blinked, confused. "Oh, yes," she said softly. Inside her apron, the recorder's light blinked steadily, and above them, the camera captured it all. Amelia didn't sleep much that night, but this time it wasn't from despair. It was from a rigorous, focused energy she hadn't felt in years. She met with Jenna and the other owners again, this time with a laptop and a neat folder of everything she'd gathered. Messages, receipts, the health inspection report, and the recording of Victor calmly asking for cash in exchange for a fixed review. They listened in silence. When it ended, the room felt electric. "That's extortion," Marcus said bluntly. "Or very close to it," Jenna agreed. "Whatever it is," Amelia said, "it isn't honest criticism. It isn't journalism." They discussed options. Some wanted to go straight to the police. Others worried it would be dismissed as just business. Someone suggested a lawsuit, but again, money and time were against them. In the end, they decided on a multi-pronged approach. First, they contacted a reporter from a larger regional paper known for investigative work, someone outside Victor's cozy circle. Amelia sent a carefully written email with a taste of what she had, just enough to interest but not overwhelm. The reporter replied within a day. "This sounds serious." They did. In a neutral cafe in another neighborhood, Amelia laid everything out. The reporter, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a worn notebook, asked questions, took notes, requested copies of documents and recordings. "Boss?" "Yes," Amelia said. "I want that. I want people to know we were lied about." Second, they prepared a coordinated statement, a letter signed by multiple business owners describing similar experiences with Victor, demands for free meals, hints at paid fixes, suspicious timing of negative reviews after refusals. It was respectful, factual, and firm. Third, Amelia prepared her own platform, the cafe's modest social media pages, her mailing list, a simple website. She drafted a calm, clear message explaining that an article was coming out, that it might be upsetting, but that it would contain the truth. Then, they waited. 2 weeks later, on a quiet Thursday, it happened. Victor's face appeared in the header, next to quotes from emails he had written, screenshots of messages, and, most damning of all, a transcript of his conversation in Amelia's cafe, accompanied by still shots from the security footage. His words, stripped of charm, looked ugly in print. The article included input from media ethicists, legal experts, and other critics who condemned such practices. It listed several cases of small businesses harmed by his reviews, juxtaposed with their spotless inspection records. It also told Amelia's story, from Mark and Millie's warm beginnings to the night she found her cafe nearly empty after his article, and her decision to fight back. Her quote closed the piece. "Criticism is fair when it's honest. What he did wasn't about food, it was about power." The reaction was immediate. Comments poured in, this time on the newspaper's site and across social media. People expressed outrage, sympathy, and anger. Some admitted they had avoided certain places because of Victor's reviews and now felt guilty. By afternoon, Victor's employer, the local paper that syndicated his column, announced that his work was under review pending investigation. His blog's comment section was flooded with accusations. Within days, sponsors withdrew support. One restaurant publicly stated they had terminated any promotional relationship with him. A week later, the announcement came. His column was canceled. His past articles would be reevaluated. He posted a weak non-apology on a smaller platform, claiming his words were taken out of context and that everyone benefits from narrative partnerships. No one was convinced. Amelia, meanwhile, posted her own message. Calm, simple, without gloating, she shared the article and the health inspector's old report. She invited people to come see for themselves whether her cafe was a risk or a refuge. The following Saturday, the bell over the door did not stop ringing. At first, Amelia thought it was a fluke. The morning after the article, a few familiar faces returned, regulars who had stayed away, looking sheepish but hopeful. Then new people came in, phones in hand, saying softly, "We read about you." The cafe, once nearly empty, began to buzz again. Cups clinked, chairs scraped. The low hum of conversation returned. The smell of cinnamon rolls and coffee wrapped around everyone like a blanket. Lily moved quickly behind the counter, smiling in a way Amelia hadn't seen in months. Marcus joked with a table of retirees who'd read every line of the article and wanted the exact cinnamon roll that started it all. A woman approached the counter, hands wrapped around a steaming mug. "Mrs. Foster," she said. Amelia looked at her for a moment, then smiled gently. "You're here now." Business didn't just recover, it grew. People liked the story of the small cafe that had stood up to a bully with a keyboard. They liked the idea that truth could win, slowly, over lies. They liked the way Amelia's place felt, honest, warm, earned. There was another, quieter form of justice, too. Other critics, wary of being associated with Victor's behavior, began emphasizing transparency. Some published policies about never accepting gifts or money in exchange for coverage. A few even reached out to Amelia to apologize for the industry's failures and asked if they could feature her story as an example of resilience. As for Victor, he faded. Occasionally, someone would mention seeing a short, bitter review he'd tried to post under a different name, quickly dismissed or mocked in the comments by people who recognized his style. His influence, once sharp and feared, dulled and broke. Amelia didn't obsess over him. She had ovens to tend, customers to greet, staff to encourage. She had a life, the life he had tried to shrink to a headline and a punchline. One quiet evening after closing, she sat alone at a corner table with a cup of tea. The cafe was dim, lit by the soft glow of a few lamps and the streetlight outside. She listened to the lingering echo of the day, laughter that still seemed to vibrate in the air. On the wall near the counter, there was a new framed item, a copy of the investigative article, folded to the page where her quote appeared. Above it, in a simple black frame, was an old photo of her and Mark in their 20s, sitting at that tiny apartment table with 2 chipped mugs and a notebook between them. "We did it," she murmured, touching the frame. "Not the way we planned." Years passed, and Mark and Millie's Corner became more than just a cafe. Amelia trained younger bakers, sharing not just recipes but values, consistency, honesty, pride in doing things right even when no one is watching. She started a small support group for other small business owners, a monthly gathering at the cafe where they shared advice, contacts, and shoulders to lean on. The memory of Victor's review didn't vanish, but it changed shape. It became less a wound and more a scar, a reminder of what she'd survived and what she'd learned. Amelia smiled. "I don't thank him for what he did." She paused, listening to the soft jazz, the quiet clatter of cups, the murmur of contented voices. The cafe felt full, not just of people, but of something deeper. Respect, trust, justice. Because in the end, her revenge had not been about ruining him. It had been about restoring the truth, about showing that a single cruel voice could be challenged when good people stood together, about proving that dignity, once shaken, could be rebuilt, stronger than before. Thank you for listening. Do you think she went too far, or did she simply take back her justice? Share your thoughts in the comments.